Well, I realize we're the last thing that stands between you and lunch, so we'll just have a brief presentation for you to wrap up the morning. So, what exactly do we mean by interoperability? Well, HPCO uses this term a lot, but we believe it plays an integral role in helping the industry transition to dynamic offers. We heard this morning words like evolution, transformation, living between two worlds. When we sat down and were planning for the conference, we thought that this session would be a good one to end the morning because we feel it is really the glue that helps airlines to progress, make incremental progress towards dynamic offers. So Melanie and I are going to spend a few minutes and kind of talk about what we mean by interoperability. There we go. Okay, so interoperability is not unique to our industry. We see it in other places as well. In the healthcare industry, it really allows that seamless healthcare, regardless of where you are, by medical records being shared between doctors' offices, hospitals, etc. It's used in industries like water management to mitigate flooding, and you see quite a few use cases in the telecom industry with an iPhone being able to call an Android phone, or being able to seamlessly move from 3G to 4G to 5G networks, etc. But where does it play in for us? Because we're here to talk about dynamic offers. So there's many places where we see getting things to work together is important. So combining of dynamic and traditional offers, we know that airlines use a wide variety of pricing strategies to serve different types of passengers, things such as business and leisure, demand-stimulating sales, advertising promotions, corporate contracts, government, military, etc. And it's likely that all of these won't roll out at the same time, or that you won't roll out dynamic across your entire network at the same time. So all your downline systems, your analysts need to be managing both dynamic and traditional offers at the same time. You also have many alliance and marketing partners. So we talked about the challenge of interline a little bit in some of the sessions earlier. And we know that different airlines are in different places along their journey to dynamic offers. These marketing and alliance partnerships and interline partnerships play an important role in your revenue. And we know that you want to be able to move with your dynamic offers, but maintain those partnerships and keep that revenue flowing. And lastly, offers that use both types of data. So Graham mentioned a little earlier, one way to move faster is to use some of what you have and use as much as what you have to move forward. So in transition, we see things like leveraging data to create more dynamic offers, like dynamic price adjustment of existing offers, or combining pre-filed, say, baggage data or special items data with a dynamic offer, or carrier-imposed fees, and other types of pre-filed data to drive product-driven searches, which Melanie will cover in a little while. So don't strain your eyes on this. In the morning in the keynote, we talked about the quagmire of the airline ecosystem. And what this is we're working closely in collaboration with IATA, and the consortium developed the reference architecture to work with and support dynamic offers. So suffice it to say, when you look at this or you think about the quagmire from earlier this morning, you have product management, offer management, order management, servicing, and delivery of the offers that you're selling. All of those systems and subsystems, and I think the number mentioned earlier was 200 different systems that needed to be touched in the case of adding a new economy product. So we know that the ecosystem is complicated, and that's where we see interoperability playing an important role in trying to make incremental progress as those systems get updated. So again, we talked about this morning, how does HPCO address interoperability? Kind of the same way that Alex mentioned that we address accelerating to dynamic offers. So we see interoperability plays an important role in the data, and Daphne mentioned how we're working to get traditional offers and dynamic offers working together within the data from a competitive data standpoint, as well as we'll look at use cases throughout the week in taking the traditional offers and a product catalog working together. None of this can be done without collaboration and standards, working closely with IATA towards the end game, but looking at ways that we can make incremental progress. And of course, the technology, both the integration that Tom mentioned between systems and the systems themselves to maintain that data, all need to work together in that both worlds. So we know that as we've been working along and coming up with incremental progress along the way, you've seen this diagram a few times, we know that all of the systems need to work together so there's no revenue leakage, allows airlines to choose which subsystems they update at which time, and support interline and the market needs along the way. But let's bring this into action a little bit and take some look at some examples of interoperability in action.
Thank you, Rich, and hi, everyone. I am very happy to be with you today, and I'm especially excited for all of us to be together as we work to transform our industry. It truly is an exciting time for us to be in the airline industry. So happy for you to join us, and thank you for listening to me today talk about interoperability, which is one of my favorite subjects, because interoperability is not new. This is not a new concept, and from ATPCO's perspective, anytime we create new products, we create new functionality, we have an underlying requirement for interoperability because we want to make sure that we don't break the ecosystem. As we move into a world of dynamic offers, we now require interoperability between our traditional environment and our dynamic environment. So as we look at a few examples, we're going to talk about how interoperability is important as you progress to dynamic offers. We've heard all morning that it's not a knife-edge cutover. It's going to be a progressive step by step as you move through the journey to go from where you are today in traditional to get you to where you want to be in dynamic offers. And we want to make sure that you don't short-circuit your ecosystem. So we'll look at a few examples. The first one I want to look at is what we call dynamic pricing, or more specifically, adjusted pricing. Now, the requirement here is to create a solution using traditional ATPCO fare and rule data, and then optionally allow an airline to dynamically determine the optimal price and dynamically adjust the price at time of shopping, all before returning that to the consumer. So obviously we want to make this work, and we want to allow airlines to have unlimited number of price points, but we do know on this journey that most airlines are not yet ready for one order. So until such time that they're able to implement one order within their environment and with their interline partners, they're going to need these dynamically adjusted prices to flow through the current ecosystem. That means ticketing and all downline processes. So this is where we have a challenge, or this is where we have a short circuit in the ecosystem. Because not only are there challenges with interline and alliance shopping, but you also have challenges with those downline processes. Because today, downline processes such as settlement, changes in refunds, fare management, and so on, all require knowledge of all fares in the market in order to have a comprehensive database that they can use to compare to sale and ticket information. So you can imagine if that dynamically adjusted fare appears on a ticket and that ticket flows through downline processes, you have a disconnect because the downline processes are using fares distributed by ATPCO and the tickets reflecting a dynamic fare that was not distributed. So then we come to the challenge of, can we create an interoperable solution? Now, most airlines that are doing adjusted pricing today have created bilateral solutions or proprietary solutions. And these work some of the time, but they don't work all of the time. So they do restore connectivity to the network sometimes, but there's still some network work that needs to be done, or some short circuit, if you will. So for example, you can imagine that an airline today who has its own dynamic pricing system and its own downline processes can successfully implement a proprietary solution. Same thing if they're using the same vendor for their dynamic systems and their downline processes. However, when you introduce different vendors or you introduce interline partners with different vendors, that proprietary or bilateral solution, it becomes challenging. It becomes costly and becomes challenging to implement. So one of the things we're working on at ATPCO is an industry solution to allow these dynamically adjusted fares to flow through the ecosystem. One concept is to take an order with an adjusted price, convert that data to ATPCO standard fare and rule formats, and then distribute it to downline systems so that they can use it in their current processes today, and we restore order to the system. Now, these concepts are still in ATPCO's design teams, so if you are interested in exploring them further with us, I encourage you to get involved in our design teams. Now, that first solution looked at dynamic pricing. I want to take your time to look at one other example where we're looking at interoperability with the product catalog. So we've all heard about the product catalog. This product catalog that ATPCO is exploring will allow airlines complete flexibility to define and differentiate their products to the depth and detail that they want. So how can we use the product catalog today? Is there a way that we can use it in an incremental step and start driving product-based searches and product-driven offer creation processes? And can we do this in a way that it builds efficiencies? It gives us a more efficient process than we have today, and it integrates with our existing ecosystem. So some challenges we see, as we know, today, we're not ready to create offers simply using a product catalog. We have integration issues and operational issues when we're trying to combine traditional with dynamic. So how can we synchronize those two, and how can we enable that product catalog to drive our product-driven search when the product catalog is so much more detailed and it gives us more depth of product definition than the traditional data? So our first response to this is to say, can we take ATPCO's data today, your fares and rules that you have today, and can we transform that into a catalog? Meaning we remove all of the pricing elements, we summarize it down to product data, and we transform it into a catalog. And then can we use the data in the catalog as a first step in a product-driven search, but provide you a pathway or a link to your legacy data so that you can still flow through all your current legacy processes. So I'll give you a little picture of what we're looking at. Our first step on this was to take a look at the current offer creation process. So this is what we have today. We have a low fare search process that creates pricing solutions. It brings in schedules, availability, fares, rules, optional services, brands, and so on. Then we said, okay, what's our end state? The end state where we all want to be is offers and orders, where we're using a product catalog, we're creating contextual relevant offers, we are applying taxes and fees, we are packaging and presenting our offers, and ultimately we have customized offers. So how do we get from a pricing solution to customized offers? So we've said, can we, during the transition, create product solutions where you start with a catalog, and I'm going to quote my friend Nikki from this morning, who said, "Let me shop for what I want." Well, this is what we're trying to do with this. We're saying, let's pick products that the customers asked for, or that you as airlines have contextually, or using your own internal profile systems realize that they might want. Let's pick relevant products, and then ATPCO will give you a link to the fairs, rules, brands, services that support those products. So in the end, you're only building itineraries and building offers for the products that the customers actually asked for. And we believe this is a good incremental first step to get the product catalog out in use. Because as we've heard this morning, you can't make progress unless you start. So you've got to start somewhere. And this is our initial solution for product catalog. We're going to talk a lot more in depth on this tomorrow during the dynamic offers session, and you're all invited to attend that if you'd like to hear more. And with that, I'm going to turn this back to Rich. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Our goal here was to highlight some of the ways interoperability plays a role in powering the transition to dynamic offers. By providing flexibility in traditional and dynamic offers across markets to support interline and offering offers using dynamic and existing data. Driving solution standards that can help with the power the downline processes so that they don't short circuit. Provide system of choice for different parts of the process, or to move between systems as you progress through your transformation, and also allow a modular cutover, as I said, of certain parts. And again, the ways we're supporting that are through data collaboration to drive that scalability with the technology. Now, as Tom mentioned, the breakout sessions this afternoon and the full day sessions tomorrow do deeper dives into each of these sections, but they're not separate from each other. They're all interconnected in how ATPCO is trying to help you progress wherever you are in your journey towards dynamic offers, towards whatever your end state is. So we see that the interoperability that we talk about is how we help you along the way to make incremental progress. So what's next? We want you to go to those sessions today. You'll get a deeper dive into a lot of what was covered from a data perspective this morning, from a product catalog perspective, learn more about all of the different solutions we're doing with dynamic offers. And then the next is lunch. So if for those of you who joined us for breakfast, that's downstairs in the Al Manzil room. So you'll walk back down and then down a staircase or down the elevators. And we look forward to joining you back here at 1:30 to join the breakout sessions and enjoy the rest of the content.